ask you a question today. Jesus once said, "A little leaven leavens the whole loaf." Do you know what that means? Jesus was making reference to the Jewish dietary law, and there were certain times of the year during religious holidays and festivals when the bread that was to be made was to be unleavened bread, bread that didn't have any yeast in it. Yeast is a bacteria, and so as a sign of purity, there was no leaven, no yeast put in the bread. As a matter of fact, there was quite a cleansing ritual every year before Passover and other high holidays where they would completely clean and cleanse the house, especially the area where food was made, to make sure that there wasn't even a speck of leaven, of yeast anywhere, so that it didn't get into the bread and contaminate the bread. And Jesus was saying that kind of purity in your dietary law is important, but that kind of purity in your spiritual well-being is even more important. One of the things that we all have a tendency to do is compromise with sin, to compromise with evil, to allow the presence of things that we know aren't really right. They're just kind of things that, we might say they're not really black, they're not really white, they're just kind of gray somewhere in the middle. They're not really wrong. They're just a little off color. Maybe they're just a white lie. It's one of our favorite expressions. I wasn't really telling a lie. It's just a little white lie. And sometimes we try to minimize sin. But when we contaminate our life with these little sins, with just a speck of sin, when there are things that we know are wrong, even though the world calls them right, and we allow those things to begin to be a part of our life on a daily basis, what happens is we become like that loaf of bread. That little bit of leaven leavens the whole loaf, and that little bit of sin in our life begins to permeate and contaminate our thinking and our spirituality, our behavior, our attitudes, and everything about us. So be on guard. Be aware. You don't have to be a prude, and you don't have to be legalistic, and you shouldn't be. But God has loved us with such an enormous love. He has given such great grace and mercy to us, and our response ought to be not a legalistic adherence to the laws and the rules and the regulations, but our response ought to be loving Him back in such a way that what we desire is the purity of His presence, uncontaminated by the evil and sin of this world. If we really love Him, He says we'll keep His commandments, not out of duty, not out of obligation, but out of love. So be aware. Keep your eyes open. Keep your spiritual ears open. Continually test the things that are part of your life and make sure that they're not contaminated with things of this world. And if you do that, your life will be a pure life that will represent Jesus more accurately to this world and reflect Him so that they can see who He really is. And you will give honor and glory to the Lord by the way you live. Stay clean. Make it a great day. I'll see you next time.